Welcome to this deep dive. Today we've got a really interesting custom exploration lined up just for you.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic today.
It really is because, look, if you're keeping an eye on the private equity landscape right now, you know the ground is totally shifting.
Oh, absolutely.
But to really understand just how much it's changed, think about this for a second. Right now, in the UK alone, there are over 17,000 people walking around with the title of Chief Financial Officer on their LinkedIn profiles.
Wow, 17,000. That's a lot.
Right, it's a massive number. Yet, private equity firms are sitting on all this dry powder, and they are leaving crucial C-suite seats completely empty across their portfolio.
Yeah, they're terrified of making a bad hire.
Exactly. And so the obvious question for you listening is, well, why? Why are sponsors swiping left on all these highly qualified people?
Well, it's because the very definition of a financial steward has completely fractured. I mean, it's a structural paradox.
A paradox how? Like, too many people but not the right skills.
Exactly. The talent pool looks super deep on paper, right? But it is incredibly shallow when you actually filter for the specific, battle-tested capabilities that are required now in 2026.
Right, which brings us to our main source for today.
Yeah, we're using the Stanton House PE Salary Guide 2026 as our diagnostic tool today.
And what makes this guide so compelling is that it completely bypasses the theoretical stuff.
Totally. It maps out the exact operational realities, the relentless pressures, and honestly, the brutal execution risks that are just redefining the finance function right now.
So let's look at the battlefield these leaders are walking onto, because the macro environment is dictating entirely new rules of engagement.
It really is.
I mean, the UK market right now is favoring stability over stimulus. We're operating in a high-tax, high-scrutiny landscape.
Yeah, and if you look at the late 2025 data, it showed UK PE deal value stabilizing around £49 billion.
49 billion, which tells us the capital is definitely there, and it's moving.
Right, the money exists, but the deal volumes are actively down.
And that's the kicker, right? Fewer deals happening.
Exactly. So that means the execution risk on the deals that do actually cross the line is hyper-concentrated. Sponsors are placing fewer bets.
So every single portfolio company just has to perform flawlessly.
Flawlessly, and crucially, for a significantly longer period of time.
Ah, right. The hold periods.
Yeah, that is the fundamental mechanism driving this whole shift. Hold periods are extending, and exit timelines are just dragging out.
So historically, like a PE sponsor might bring in a CFO to execute a really aggressive, say, 2 to 3 year transformation.
Right, just flip the company and generate a natural reset point.
The CFO gets their payout, the sponsor gets their multiple, everyone's happy, everyone moves on.
Exactly. But that luxury is completely gone now.
So it sounds like the traditional PE playbook was essentially a sprint. You get in, clean the books, optimize the capital structure, streamline things, and then hand it off.
Yeah, quick sprint.
But if hold periods are extending to like 5, 6, or even 7 years, that changes the psychological demands completely. I mean, you're running an ultra marathon, but the sponsor still expects you to run it at a sprinter's pace.
That is a perfect analogy. You're sprinting a marathon. And, leverage management, for example.
Right.
It isn't just a restructuring event at the beginning and a refinancing event at the end anymore. It's become this daily fight against volatile interest rates.
Wow. A daily fight.
Yeah, and that daily fight is what the Stanton House Guide defines as the absolute #1 priority for 2026, which they call operational grip.
Operational grip. I like that phrase.
Yeah, in a prolonged hold period, operational grip is literally the difference between a successful exit and a distressed asset.
So what does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis for the CFO?
Mechanistically, it means relentless, super granular cash flow forecasting.
Right.
It means fiercely protecting your EBITDA margins against, supply chain shocks or sudden inflation.
So you can't just be a high-level strategy person anymore.
Not at all. It requires real-time covenant compliance and incredibly tight working capital management. Your hands had to be firmly on the steering wheel of the daily operations.
Which brings us right back to those 17,000 CFOs we talked about at the start.
Yep.
It makes total sense why a phenomenal corporate CFO at, say, a stable, publicly traded company would really struggle here.
They absolutely would.
Because in a massive corporate environment, a CFO have armies of analysts, right? They've got established data lakes, predictable quarterly rhythms.
It's a well-oiled machine.
But if you drop that same executive into a highly leveraged PE-backed business where the data is messy and the margin for error is basically zero, they might just freeze.
Yeah, the guide actually refers to this exact dynamic as capability inflation.
Capability inflation, that's interesting.
The title of CFO has just expanded so much in the broader corporate world
Yeah.
that it's lost its specificity.
So having the title doesn't mean you have the actual skills PE needs.
Exactly. In private equity, readiness is earned, not titled. Sponsors don't care about your blue chip pedigree.
They want to know what you've actually built.
Right. They want to know, have you physically built a 13-week cash flow model yourself during a liquidity crunch?
Have you navigated a really complex carve-out?
Exactly. The margin for error is so razor thin right now that sponsors literally cannot afford the time or the capital to train a corporate CFO on the nuances of a leveraged environment.
Well, let me push back on that a little bit. With 17,000 CFOs out there, aren't PE sponsors just being way too picky? I mean, are they looking for a unicorn that doesn't exist?
It's a fair question, but the scarcity isn't cyclical. It's structural. They aren't being picky for the sake of it. The margin for error is literally zero.
So relevance outweighs pedigree every single time.
Every time. You can't learn this stuff on the job when millions of pounds are at stake daily.
Man, I imagine this completely fractures the traditional job description over the lifespan of an investment.
Oh, completely.
Because if hold periods are longer, the wartime mindset you need to rip a division out of a parent company on day one.
Yeah, the carve-out phase.
Right. That has to be fundamentally different from the diplomacy you need to pitch a pristine equity story to institutional buyers on day 1,000.
You've hit on the exact reason why we are seeing so much fatigue and churn at the senior level right now.
People are just burning out.
Yeah, because the demands of the early stage versus the late stage are almost diametrically opposed.
Right.
And sponsors are finally recognizing that asking one human being to seamlessly transition between these distinct phases is just a recipe for burnout.
So how are they fixing that?
We're seeing this massive shift toward precision hiring, where talent is mapped strictly to the life cycle phase of the investment.
Okay, let's break down those phases then. The early stage, like right after an acquisition, that has to be pure chaos management.
It's entirely foundational. You are dealing with really complex organizational restructuring.
Like integrating totally different systems.
Yeah, especially if it's a buy and build strategy. The finance function has to rapidly integrate newly acquired add-on businesses, rationalizing different accounting systems, different cultures.
It sounds exhausting.
It is. It's messy, deeply operational work focused entirely on stabilization and just setting the reporting baseline.
Okay, and then the late stage is obviously about exit readiness.
Right.
But the scrutiny of exit readiness has evolved massively, hasn't it? It's not just about proving historical EBITDA anymore.
No, the guide specifically points out ESG reporting as a really critical late-stage requirement now.
And I know in some corporate circles, ESG is still treated as sort of a marketing or like a compliance exercise.
Yeah, a box-ticking thing.
But in PE, based on the Stanton House data, it sounds like this is pure value protection.
It is entirely about valuation math. During vendor due diligence, buyers are basically looking for any excuse to discount the asset.
Right, they want a cheaper price.
Exactly. So if a portfolio company has muddy supply chain data or unquantified carbon exposure, a potential buyer will literally calculate a higher risk premium.
And apply a lower multiple to the business.
Exactly. Bad ESG data creates major execution risk. It can delay an exit or just kill a deal outright.
Wow. So the modern CFO has to own that data integrity with the exact same rigor they apply to a P&L statement.
They have to. But wait, earlier you mentioned precision hiring based on the stage.
Yeah.
Doesn't switching out the C-suite every 2 years based on the life cycle stage cause incredible drag on company culture?
That's a really good point.
If you bring in a wartime CFO to do the messy restructuring and then swap them out for a polished exit readiness CFO 3 years later, how does a business survive that level of leadership whiplash?
That is the critical friction point right there. And it's exactly why PE firms are aggressively adopting what's called a blended talent strategy.
Blended talent. What does that mean in practice?
Well, they're completely moving away from traditional linear hiring. Instead of forcing cultural whiplash on the permanent team, They deploy highly specialized interim CFOs and finance directors to absorb that friction.
Oh, I see. So the interim takes the heat.
Exactly. It's kind of like the difference between a wartime medic and a physical therapist.
Oh, I like that.
Right. The interim is the medic. They get dropped in for a 3 to 6 month sprint to stop the bleeding, stabilize the carve-out, handle the brutal restructuring.
And then they extract.
Yep, they leave, which allows the permanent CFO, the physical therapist, to come in with clean hands to build the culture and the long-term equity story without all the baggage of those initial cuts.
That is a perfect framework for how sponsors are operating right now. These interims are not stopgaps. They aren't emergency substitutes.
Right, they're deliberate.
They are deliberate value creation levers. They're executing highly complex, specific mandates, and the market completely reflects that value.
What do the numbers look like for them?
Well, according to the Stanton House data, specialist interim CFOs in the mid-market are commanding day rates of £1,500 to £1,800,
1,800 a day. Wow.
and sometimes significantly higher for distressed assets.
I mean, 1,800 a day sounds super steep on paper, but if they are unblocking a £50 million refinancing hurdle,
Yeah, or keeping a covenant breach from triggering a default.
exactly, then that ROI is essentially instantaneous.
Exactly. The premium pays for itself by de-risking the permanent hire.
Right.
By having the interim execute the messy stabilization phase, the sponsor essentially buys time to find the exact right permanent CFO for the long-term growth phase.
That makes total sense. But regardless of whether the CFO is interim or permanent, there is one capability that seems universally demanded across every single phase right now.
Oh yeah, the ultimate non-negotiable.
It has to be technology and systems fluency.
Absolutely.
Because if we're talking about building scalable finance architectures and ensuring bulletproof data for ESG and exit readiness, the modern CFO basically has to act as a co-architect of the operating model, right alongside the CTO.
They absolutely do. Transformation skills are paramount now. A finance leader in 2026 must be capable of leading comprehensive ERP overhauls.
Yeah, migrating disjointed legacy systems into a unified architecture.
Because if the underlying data layer is weak, everything else fails. The forecasting fails, the cash management fails.
And the equity story completely crumbles. Exactly. And if you're building scalable data architectures in 2026, you are inevitably building the infrastructure for AI.
Oh, 100%.
The Stanton House AI Leadership Survey data in this report is fascinating. It exposes this massive gap between ambition and reality.
It really does.
Like 60% of leaders surveyed say AI is a top-tier board priority. Everyone wants those efficiency gains.
Right, everyone's talking about it.
Yet only 12% report having a fully implemented AI strategy, and a staggering 77% lack an AI policy or governance framework entirely.
That 77% is the danger zone.
It really is.
And it brings up a crucial shift in responsibilities that we're seeing. AI governance is increasingly falling right onto the CFO's desk.
Okay, I have to push back on that.
Yeah.
Because traditionally, if operations wants to deploy an AI tool for supply chain logistics or marketing wants to use generative AI for copy, that falls under the CTO's purview, right? Or the IT department.
You would think so.
So why is the finance person, the CFO, the one losing sleep over the AI governance framework?
Because in a private equity context, ungoverned AI is fundamentally a financial risk that destroys valuation.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that.
Let's look at it. If the marketing team's generative AI pulls in unverified copyrighted data, the company is suddenly exposed to massive intellectual property liabilities.
Ah, I see.
Or if an AI supply chain model hallucinates and auto-executes contracts with vendors at incorrect pricing.
Oh man, that directly hits EBITDA.
Directly. During due diligence, a buyer's audit team will demand to see the data lineage, the ethical framework, and the cybersecurity exposure of every AI model driving the business.
Wow.
So if the CFO cannot audit the AI, the buyer will discount the valuation.
So the CFO has to act as the ultimate rational steward of AI ambition.
Exactly.
They have to ground the CTO's vision in actual return on investment. It's not just about whether the tech is cool or cutting edge.
Right.
It's about whether the data it produces will survive a hostile financial audit during an exit.
Precisely. They have to be the one asking the hard questions. Is this AI tool actually driving tangible EBITDA? Or is it just introducing unquantified risk into our capital structure?
That requires such a unique blend of deep technical understanding and ruthless commercial logic.
It really does.
So We've basically built the profile of the ultimate PE finance leader in 2026.
We have.
They are endurance athletes managing prolonged holds. They possess the operational grip to forecast cash in volatile markets.
Yep.
They navigate massive life cycle shifts. And they are technologists guarding the gates of AI governance.
That's a massive job.
It is. So how does the market actually compensate that incredibly specific, scarce combination of skills?
Well, the compensation structures are highly liberative, but they are engineered to be completely unsentimental.
Unsentimental, meaning heavily performance-based.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the UK mid-market, base salaries generally sit between 140,000 and 250,000 pounds.
Okay.
And that flexes higher for really complex or distressed assets. But the base salary is just the entry ticket.
Right. The real behavioral drivers are in the incentives.
Always. Bonuses, which range from 40% to 100% of the base, are tied to strict short-term delivery outcomes.
Like what kind of outcomes?
Usually 12 to 24-month milestones. Things like immediate cash generation or completing a critical system integration.
So they are actively paying for velocity and measurable impact.
Exactly.
And how has the equity piece evolved? Because historically, that 1 to 3% equity stake was almost treated as a signing bonus, right?
It used to be.
You know, you vest over your tenure, and as long as you don't completely break the company, you just ride the wave to a massive payout at the exit.
Oh, that era is completely dead. Dead.
Yeah.
Equity is no longer an automatic entitlement based on time served. It is now deeply mathematically tied to value creation hurdles.
So the sponsor engineers the conversation, so the CFO only shares in the upside if they actively manufacture that upside.
Exactly. Often, this means the equity only vests if the firm hits specific targets, like multiple on invested capital or strict internal rate of return targets.
Man, that perfectly encapsulates the dual mandate of the modern role.
It really does.
You need the commercial judgment to know exactly which operational levers will move the needle on those exact return targets.
Right.
And you need the technical depth in your data architecture to actually prove that value to the market. You aren't just keeping score anymore.
No, you're calling the plays on the field. You are a frontline value creator.
Wow. Let's pull this all together for our listeners.
Yeah, let's recap.
We started by looking at how the prolonged hold periods of 2026 have shifted the finance mandate from a quick sprint to an ultramarathon requiring immense operational grip.
Right.
We saw how capability inflation has made true PE-ready talent structurally scarce, which has forced sponsors to just abandon traditional hiring.
Yep. Completely rethink it.
Instead, they're using 1,800-pound-a-day interim medics to absorb the friction of early-stage carve-outs.
Which allows the permanent CFOs to focus on late-stage value protection, like bulletproof ESG data.
And overarching all of this is the demand for technical fluency, right? Where the CFO must govern AI risk because, as we learned in private equity, an unauditable algorithm is a direct threat to the exit multiple.
It really is. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating forward-looking question to consider.
Oh, I like forward-looking questions. Lay it on us.
Well, given that this executive is now orchestrating AI governance, driving data transformation, executing operational turnarounds, and partnering commercially to manufacture multiple expansion,
Yeah.
are we nearing a point where the title Chief Financial Officer is simply too narrow?
Oh, interesting.
As we look toward the PE landscape of the 2030s, will the market retire the CFO title entirely and simply demand a Chief Value Officer?
A chief value officer. That is an incredible concept to leave you with. It perfectly captures how the function has evolved from just managing the baseline to actively architecting the upside.
It really does.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the assumptions in your own industry, look closely at where the real value is being engineered, and we will catch you next time.